Ladies and gentlemen, this is part of Foursquare Sports, a special part of our content here. Matt Sirianni, Kevin Zelskovic, Alec Nava, and then from Voice to Fans Canada, our good friend Randy Cooray. Randy, how are you? Randy,
I'm doing
there you go.
great. I'm doing great, Maddie. Thank you so much for the invite, especially for this very special occasion.
And Alec is returning from Italy. Alec, how have you been?
I've been good, man. Italy was so much fun over the past 2.5 weeks. From the north to the Tuscan region to the wine country, everything was a hit.
That's awesome, man. I mean, you're all recharged. Now, we have an episode later on this week, but today is all about today. We have a very special guest for his very special interview. First time we're ever doing this on Foursquare Sports. He is a former Major League Baseball catcher who played 8 years across the New York Yankees, Chicago White Sox, and Seattle Mariners. He is the current manager of Princeton baseball since 1998, and he's a two-time All-American at the University of North Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Scott Bradley.
Thank you, Matt. 9 years, not 8. Don't cut me short.
Oh, my bad. I was a year old.
All good.
All good. So, Scott, I know recently Princeton baseball just finished up this year. Unfortunately, you guys fell short of making the Ivy League tournament. But from what you told me, you had a lot of freshmen that you had to deal with, so that could be part of the problem.
Yeah, it's always an interesting year. In the Ivy League, we don't deal a whole lot with transfers. We don't deal a whole lot with, the NIL and all the really hot topics in college sports right now. So, we bring some guys in, and if they're good enough, they have the opportunity to play right away. So we were really excited about this recruiting class when we got them through admissions. And they were as advertised. They came in. We had 3 of our top 4 hitters were our freshmen. They played pretty much every game. Thomas Cernius at first base, Brady Kaufman out and left, and Bennett Criar, kind of a super utility guy, ended up DHing a little bit more than we had hoped because he sort of popped his shoulder out, wasn't able to throw. They were 3 of our top 4 leading hitters. And really handled themselves well against some really good competition.
Well, you had a really good competitive season, and then unfortunately the Harvard series came, and then things just kind of spiraled out. But I think this is a learning experience for the freshmen for sure.
It really is, and I don't think no matter what high school program they come out of, no matter what summer ball program they play, that freshman year is really tough when you're dealing with all your classes, your academics. Trying to manage through the days. The year gets long, and I think the freshmen just got a little bit tired, and I think it showed that last weekend. They're at that point, classes that ended, they're preparing for their final exams. There's just a lot of other factors other than just coming to the ballpark to play baseball.
Right. Now, one thing I want to say, you've been to the NCAA tournament 7 times coming out of the Ivy League. Of all those 7 times, which year was the most fulfilling for you?
I can't remember which year, but we went to the University of South Carolina. And it was Central Florida was actually the number 1 seed. We were playing at old Sarge Fry Stadium down in Columbia, South Carolina. South Carolina was the number 2 seed. Citadel was number 3. I can remember because we played such a tough schedule early in the year. I know when they had the selection show, they actually mentioned that we were like the only under 500 team,
right?
To make the NCAA tournament. And Buck Showalter, who was doing, he's a former teammate of mine, on the phone during the selection show, called me up and asked me about it. I said, Buck, we're a really good team. I said, we played North Carolina, we played NC State, we played against all the power schools early in the year. We got beat up. I said, we've won like 20 out of our last 24. Mm-hmm. And we went down there, and in game 1, Central Florida had 2 first-round draft picks, a guy named Pope, and the other, I think, was Arnold. And they tried to throw their number 3 against us, like some of these teams try to do, thinking that would be the way to win the tournament. Right. And we knocked their number 3 pitcher out in probably the 3rd or 4th inning. They had to bring in Arnold. They came back, tied it. They brought Arnold in, and they had a 1-run lead. They figured he would be able to finish out the game and then start a couple days later. Well, we scored a run off him and took the game into 13 innings and ended up losing in 13, but it was just a terrific ball game. They came back the next day and beat South Carolina, and then South Carolina ended up winning the last two because Central Florida was sort of out of pitchers at that point. We actually beat the Citadel the next day to stay alive, and that night had to come back and play South Carolina in an elimination game because they had lost to Central Florida. A night game, a Saturday night game against a big opponent. We had a guy hit a home run in the 8th inning to give us the lead in the top of the 8th. We were really thin on pitching at that point, and we just couldn't hold it. But it was an exciting, fun game. The next day, we went to the ballpark before our trip home. And when our guys left for us to head to the airport, the South Carolina fans got up and gave us a standing ovation because we had played so well and we had kind of helped out with that Central Florida game. Had helped out. So South Carolina was able to win the region. Out of all my years, that was fun. We went to some great places. We went to Arkansas one year, went to Texas one year. Anytime we can take our guys, went to Louisiana, Lafayette. We went into the Bayou, 1 year. So anytime we can take our kids into those big-time college baseball exposures, it's a lot of fun, and it's something they talk about forever.
That's awesome. Now, with all the success that you've had in your nearly 30 years as the manager of Princeton baseball, how has recruiting been over the last several years?
Well, the recruiting for us in the Ivy League is completely different because the first thing we have to do is we have to get a sense on whether we think they're going to be admissible or not. I'm allowed to put 6 or 7 names on a list that I send up to admissions. I write letters of recommendation for all those kids, but it is by no means a guarantee that they're going to get in. We always tell all the recruits all the time, look, you get in through the admissions door, not through the coach's door. So we spend a lot of time looking at their grades, looking at their course schedule, and all that. So it's difficult. There was that big academic scandal a couple years ago with Lori Loughlin and some of the different sort of Hollywood people. And that was a lot of it was tied to athletics, that there was this guy out in California that was finding coaches at the high-end academic schools to put kids on their list for money. They were being bribed to put kids on their list. So it just shows just how important our lists are and what people do to try to get on the list of a coach, especially at an Ivy League school.
Wow. I didn't think that it'd be that difficult, but it is an uphill battle for the Ivy League. Now, one thing I want to ask you to continue on, you've seen it all in college baseball as a player and as a manager, but through those two experiences, through those two different views, what parts of college baseball have remained unchanged over those years?
The bases are still 90 feet apart. Pitcher's mound is 60 feet, 6 inches. Even if you look in the major leagues, it's not the same game. We played, it was all about contact. It was all about, moving runners. It was about situational baseball. Now some of these college parks, Matt, are so small. The number of home runs that guys hit.
Yeah.
You look at what Georgia Tech has done this year, maybe one of the best offensive teams in the history of college baseball. They have three dudes that are probably going to be first-round draft picks. And, they averaged almost 10 runs a game. University of Georgia, again, a really elite team. You're talking about a field that's probably 330 in the gaps and 385 to center. It's tiny. So it's really difficult when you go into those environments if you can't score runs because they're going to. When I was at North Carolina too, the NCAA tournament was 32 teams. So you're talking about a big difference. It was half the size of what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
The regionals were 8-team regionals. You had to go sort of win those. And the regionals were regional. So there was a stretch for a long time where University of Maine went to a lot of World Series when I was in college. They were going every year, but they were beating like UConn or St. John's or somebody to go to the World Series. Right now they take the top 16 teams in the country, they host, and they just start dispersing teams. So They're regional in name only. They're not regional in terms of geographics. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like college baseball, as the years have gone by, definitely have expanded. I think they take pride in college baseball for sure. But you mentioned ballparks getting smaller, that's for sure. Now, I don't know if the aluminum bats were still a thing in college baseball. Is that true?
Yeah, we had aluminum bats when I was playing. Yes, I'm not that old, Matt.
And they're still there to this day.
They still use them. They still use them.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get into more of a Major League Baseball question based on your career. Now, obviously, the biggest moment of your career has to be when Randy Johnson had that no-hitter and you were the catcher. But besides that, what was your biggest moment of your career outside of that?
You know, for me, I grew up in northern New Jersey, being drafted by the Yankees. You know, my dad made sure that my brothers and I spent a lot of time at Yankee Stadium, seeing all the really good players through the years. So being drafted by the Yankees, working my way through the system, and when I got called up, my first game was at Fenway Park. It was at the end. I felt like that first year in 1984, it was almost a reward for having a really, really good minor league season. The next year in 85, I made the team out of spring training. And opening day in 1985 is truly with my fans, friends, family, all the kids that I grew up with. I had spent so much time in Yankee Stadium. I'm from New Jersey. So making the opening day roster of the New York Yankees still to this day is probably the biggest thrill that I've had in baseball. Maybe even more than catching. Randy's no-hitter was like on the field thing, but in terms of just feeling like it was a major accomplishment was making the team in 85 out of spring training. Putting on
Yeah, I
pinstripes.
bet. I mean, especially with the pinstripes and the prestige. On top of that, Kevin might have a question for you about that. Kevin?
Yeah, so as you can tell in the background, I'm also a Yankees fan too. And I was also born in New Jersey. I was born in Edison. So me and you have that in common already. And I guess you kind of answered like one of the questions I already had like written down was like, how would you feel like about when you start coming up as a Yankee? But then I also like was looking up like some more research about you, and like apparently like you were the second pick that the Yankees took in the third round. The first one was John Elway, the NFL Hall of Famer. Were you able to like talk with John Elway? Were you able to like play with him? How was speaking with him like?
You know what was interesting? I use that as a trivia question all the time, and you'd be amazed at how many people I stump when I tell them that I was the Yankees' second pick, and I ask them to tell me who the first pick was, and then I start giving them hints like, you know, he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, you know, and he won a championship, and the names come out. They have no idea until I say you're thinking in the wrong way here,
right? And
then I can win a lot of trivia contest with that one. It was really interesting because when I signed, he didn't sign that first year. He didn't play. He signed, and the Yankees just asked him, "Come to spring training next year, or come to spring training." So he had the greatest spring break from Stanford of anybody that's ever had. He came to spring training for 2 weeks. And then he went to Oneonta that year. And I had played in Oneonta the year before, so he was up in Oneonta. Jim DeShays, who's now a broadcaster with the Cubs, played a long time in the big leagues. He was on that team, and he said those guys ran pass patterns all summer long. And it was a half-season league, but they told him that all we want you to do is play June and July, and on August 1st, you can go back to Stanford and get ready, you know, for your football season. And back in those days, nothing compared to the bonuses now. But I think they gave him $150,000 to play for 6 weeks and go to spring training for 2 weeks. So I was never around him a whole lot. I was sort of one notch ahead of him. The guys that were there with said he was a good player, said he clearly had a very, very good arm. He hit 300, didn't show a whole lot of power that first year out. But just such a good athlete. And the guys said they had a blast all summer. And he was looking at those guys all summer long saying, this is crazy they're paying this money because I'm going to play in the NFL. I have no desire. I will not be playing baseball after this year. And that's exactly what happened.
Man, I could imagine a whole different alternate universe where like John Elway is like a major league Hall of Famer like for the Yankees, and we all have a different tune. Speaking about him nowadays.
Well, then the next year, you know who the Yankees also took in the draft? The year out, I think it was the year after me, maybe 2 years, but
Was it Deion Sanders?
no, that was well after that.
Well,
Yeah,
after
it was-
that.
But in high school, they took the Yankees took Bo Jackson,
Jack.
and he clearly he didn't sign, and he went to Auburn.
Right.
But I can remember being that instructional, maybe in spring training or instructional league or something, and somebody said, "Yeah, we just drafted the next Herschel Walker," because Herschel Walker was a couple notches ahead of him. But the Yankees had taken Bo Jackson a couple years later.
That's very interesting to me. And I have a second question I wrote down, and I guess you kind of touched on it earlier, like with one of Matt's questions, but with the way the game has changed, like from the time when you played to now, like how do you feel about how much it's changed? Like with the pitch clock, being able to like review replays, pitchers being pulled after about 100 pitches. You don't really see guys throw complete games anymore. How do you feel about the current state of baseball?
Well, from a technology standpoint, you probably knew some of the things were coming. I mean, instant replay, I like in some cases, I don't like when they can go look at things that weren't even really questioned, to see whether somebody's spike comes a quarter of an inch, slides into second base and his spike raises up a quarter of an inch when they were just arguing whether he was safe or out. So the little things that they can keep looking at, they're getting a little better with, the timing of everything. So that I'm not crazy about the ball strike, the K zone and that whole thing,
Right.
with the challenge system and all that there. To me, there was a real cool relationship between the catcher, the umpire, knowing what umpires do, which umpires gave the outside corner, which didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But when you saw the technology come into tennis years ago, you felt like, okay, that's going to be the first step that we're going to eventually have that. So the technology, I think, is hard to run away from. The pitch clock basically just makes it so that the games are played again like when we used to play them. When I was playing, we didn't need a pitch clock.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was up on the mound and throwing, and we played 2.5 hour, games. The length of the games, yeah, maybe they needed to do something just to make people aware of the pace.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
My job as a catcher was to know my pitchers and to get the ball back to the mound and put a sign down. Right. And we were calling all our own pitches. And I think most of the big league teams still do. There's a few teams, almost all the college teams have coaches do it. And that takes time to get signals and get signs in, and the other thing too, that they make such a big deal about, with the length of games, if they really wanted to shorten games, cut the commercials down. But I don't think MLB is going to ever want to take money out of their pockets.
Right. Of course.
I think in the playoffs and World Series, it might be 3.5 minutes every half inning.
My God.
So during the season, it's like 2.5. So you're talking about adding 15 to 20 minutes onto every game in the postseason just because they want to collect their revenue. The way the game is played, with this sort of 3 outcome, walks, home runs, and strikeouts, I think is really boring.
Mm-hmm.
I think you looked at what the Blue Jays did last year, right? They probably had the best contact rate, put the ball in play more than anybody. I love what Pat Murphy does in Milwaukee. Right, they run the bases, they steal, they still have some guys that can hit the ball out of the ballpark, but they don't go into the game saying, okay, well, we the only way we're going to win today is if we hit 4 home runs. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the pitching decisions the game dictates.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you got who your bullpen is. Some teams, I love when guys, if they're pitching really well and the pitch count is relatively down, to let guys finish their own games. So I think sometimes the game is too predetermined. I think the managers now are told by their executives and their analytics team what moves they're supposed to make and how they're supposed to do it instead of letting them trust their gut and especially their eyes in making decisions. So I don't like that part of it. No.
So leading into my last question, I'm not a fan of this new rule, but are you a fan of the extra inning rule where like they have a ghost runner on second base whenever there's extra inning starts? Personally, I'm not a fan of it, but I'm curious to see what you think.
No, I don't like it at all. A lot of times, whenever we play midweek games in college and stuff, the home team always has the right to say whether you want to use it or not. And I can honestly say, in 2 or 3 years that it's been in existence now, I've never had to manage a game where that rule was in effect. I know some of my friends that manage in the big leagues say that sometimes you just have to end games, and they say over the course of the year you're going to win some. With that rule, you're going to lose some, but at least the games end quicker, right? And the games end quicker because if you have a really long 15, 16, 17 inning game, then all of a sudden, your bullpen is really struggling for the next couple of days,
Right.
Especially since they haven't developed starters then that can give them some length. So I don't like it at all. I think it changes the game. I like straight baseball.
Glad we're on the same page there. All right. That's all the questions I've got for me. So
I can respect that too, because I'm with the ghost runner, but I agree with you. It's not real baseball, especially when games are ending earlier. Like you like to see those 18-inning marathon games where it's like, okay, who can break through? Alec Nava has a couple questions for you.
Yeah, so one of them I didn't have written down, but the other I did. So this one that I have for you is that you did serve as an assistant to Fred Hill at Rutgers University. What was that experience like, and how did you take that entering your managerial role with Princeton?
Well, first of all, I go back basically my whole life with the Hill family. My dad and Coach Hill played football and baseball together at Uppsala College. Lived in the town next to me. I grew up in Caldwell. They were in Verona. So I've known Coach Hill my whole life. When I got done playing, trying to figure out what was going to be next for me, I had some opportunities to stay in pro ball, but I really felt like I wanted to get into college baseball. And my older brother, Bob, who you guys may know is a world-renowned soccer coach, coached the U.S. national soccer team and everything. My nephew, Michael, now coaches the Red Bull, was captain of the national team. My older brother, Bob, was at Princeton at the time, and I was at one of his soccer games. He was coaching soccer at Princeton, and the athletic director said that the head coach had just announced that he was going to retire in 2 years, and asked, with my pro experience was great. He said, but can you get some college experience? So I immediately called up Coach Hill and said, look, I'd love to come and be part of your staff. Coach Hill, just an amazing, amazing coach. I think he was still a football coach at heart. Was a two-sport coach at Montclair State before he went to Rutgers just to coach baseball. Just learned so much about organization, about how you treat kids. So that 1 year of working under Coach Hill really gave me some experience and really helped when I got the job at Princeton.
Wow.
Nice. I'm glad that whole connection with the Hill family goes way back. Now, the other question I have for you is that during your time at Princeton, you coached 7 MLB players, and among that includes Chris Young, who's the current general manager of the Texas Rangers and a former all-star pitcher with the Padres in 2007. What was it like coaching Chris Young during his time at Princeton?
Okay, well, I'm going to fact check again. I think we're up to 10 major league players.
10?
So
Wow.
I think we have
Whoa.
10 guys. One who never appeared in a game but was on a major league roster for 10 days, Tim Leahy.
Right.
But Chris Young, believe it or not, was the very first recruit, my first recruiting class at Princeton. He and I just developed a great relationship. We're basically family at this point now. It was interesting. A guy named Ryan Cotton, who was a student manager for us, was from Dallas, worked with the Dallas Mustangs, which is one of the really elite travel programs. And I asked him, I said, you got to have somebody we should be looking at. He says, well, there's this big 6'10" pitcher that's a really good student you should take a look at. So I started talking to Chris, and I sort of look one day, see that he's a really good basketball player. So I go up to the basketball office, and young John Thompson, was the assistant. Asked him what they were looking for in the recruiting class, and he said size. I said, well, is 6'10" big enough? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, there's a kid in Dallas, and they didn't know anything about it. They got some film on him. They fell in love with him. So it turned out that Chris was being recruited in basketball by places like Vanderbilt, Texas. He was being recruited in baseball, Vanderbilt, Texas, but none of those schools were going to let him play two sports. So we had just hit it off. He came in. We only had him for 2 years because he became such a high draft pick. But it's the first time I remember, and I caught Randy Johnson exclusively, for several years in Seattle. And when you get somebody that big, it actually changes the perspective of the field, right? It feels like they're almost letting go of the ball right in front of you. And Chris, even back then, he threw harder probably with us than he threw when he, after his second or third year in the big leagues. But it was just guys would take pitches they thought were down and they'd be strikes, and then they would swing at what they thought was going to be a high strike, and it would be over their heads. So he just dominated in his 2 years in both basketball and baseball. And then at the time, the Pittsburgh Pirates came calling him and made him a high draft pick and paid him first round money. So it was the right opportunity for Chris to leave.
All 6'10" of him.
And then shortly thereafter, we brought in another baseball player, and Will Venable, who now is the manager of the Chicago White Sox and doing a great job.
Oh, yeah. You got to love the White Sox with what the effort they're doing of this season. And what a job Venable's doing over there, too.
He is, and Will's the same way. Will's dad played Major League Baseball, Max. So Max and I had played against each other. Our basketball team was recruiting him. So on his recruiting visit, he came up to the office. He hadn't played baseball since his freshman year in high school. And Will kind of looked at me and said, I think maybe someday I might want to try to play baseball. So we ended up getting him into school after his freshman basketball. He said, I think next year I really want to do this. I got to focus on my studies right now. And I said to him, well, when's the last time you've hit? And he goes, well, it's been a few years. I said, well, you want to go swing now? So I brought him out to the batting cages. First 5 I threw him, he missed, kind of giggling and laughing. Next 5, he popped up in the cage. And after that, he was our best hitter. It took him 10 swings to catch up to everybody else on our team. He came out the next year, hadn't played baseball in 3 or 4 years, and handled himself really well. Came back the next year, his junior year, just lit it up, was drafted by the Orioles, said no, then came back and had a great senior year, and the Padres took him relatively high, and he was in the big leagues in 3 years. So again, having those two-sport athletes is something that we think in the Ivy League we can get. We had a couple years ago, we had a kid named Jesper Horsted, was a football, baseball player. And Jesper turned down about $250,000 in the baseball draft. Was a record-setting receiver and ended up, I think he just finished. I think he played 3 or 4 years in the NFL, was with the Bears and the Raiders. So we think we can do this two-sport athlete as well as anybody. So it's been a big reason we've been able to get some athletes that we might not normally.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty incredible that you were able to convert two-sport athletes, that you were able to keep them at the Ivy League. Usually you think in the Ivy League it's an uphill battle with recruiting, like as mentioned before. How are you able to get these guys?
Princeton education, right? There's people around the world that want to be able to come to Princeton to get a Princeton education. A lot of these guys can think beyond their playing days. They also know that in baseball, in the world of scouting, if you're good enough, they're going to find you, as proven by our 10, guys that have played in the big leagues. And we have one more that Scott Bandura is in the Giants organization, was just promoted to AAA. I think we may see him in the big leagues at the end of the year. These scouts, they find everybody. The Ivy League is loaded with really high-end players. We had 2 guys sign, not this past season, but the season before that. It's one of the reasons why we were so young, because we had a 5th-round draft pick and then a sign, 2 underclassmen. They're going to find you. And then the other thing for us too, a lot of the Power 4 schools now with the transfers and everything else, they don't want their kids to go play summer ball because they're worried about getting them poached. They're worried about having them, picked up, and whether it's tampering or not,
True.
and leave their program where we know kids aren't going to leave. They came to Princeton to get an Ivy League degree. So our kids and their development, we send them to the Cape. We send them to the North Woods League. We don't put restrictions on them. A lot of these other schools might let kids go away and play for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I personally believe that college summer ball is one of the really, really most important development tools we have, to put a wood bat in your hands and go play against the best players in the country. So it's something that we really tell people on the recruiting trails that, look, we'll get you into summer league if that's what you want to do, and there'll be no restrictions. You can play the entire year, and then we'll back you down in the fall when we get back to campus.
That's incredible. That's incredible that you're with the attitude that Princeton has. Randy's got some questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. And, it's a perfect segue, I guess, because as you were talking about the recruitment process and, John Elway being drafted, we were briefly talking about Bo Jackson and so on, two sport athletes. But the way I see it these days, and for somebody who does not have kids, like kids today are asked to play a sport 12 months out of the year. I mean, in where I am in Toronto, for soccer, these kids are playing soccer in indoor facilities. Hockey is being played all year round, and of course, with baseball as well. And I really wonder if these kids do have the ability not only to play a second sport like Bo Jackson, and guys, help me out. I'm thinking Kyler Murray is maybe
Russell
the latest
Wilson
athlete.
as well. Yeah, Kyler Russell. Yeah.
Like, I mean, how many are we going to be able to see that in the future? Number one. And number two, do you think that because of what's expected on the athletic front, that these kids have the ability to develop the mindset and qualify for even an Ivy League education, because a lot of their time is being spent on the field, ice, pitch, whatever the case may be?
How much time do we have? You want to get me going on
Matt?
you want to get me going on youth sports? We may be here for a while. I think that a lot of these youth coaches in different sports are really doing a disservice to the kids, especially at the young age. Playing multiple sports will make you better at that specific sport, right? There's nothing I like better when I go out on the recruiting trails to know somebody plays another sport. At 6 and 7 years old, to be forced to make a choice on which sport you were going to play, you don't know where your talents are going to develop. You might say, oh boy, at 6 years old, I love soccer and I'll be a soccer guy. And all of a sudden you pick up a ball one day and start throwing and saying, boy, maybe I should have played baseball, right? Maybe somebody makes a choice to be basketball and they don't grow, right? These kids should be playing as many sports as possible, being sort of cross-training, that whole thing, the old commercial back in the days with Bo Nose and all the different sports and that stuff. It makes you better. We'll take our guys sometimes. Like if I have somebody who's struggling with his weight shift and balance with his swing, I may put a hockey stick in his hand and make him have to hit a slap shot, make him have to do some different things, because you need balance, you need athleticism. I think that's the one reason, and I use Will Venable as an example all the time. He hadn't played baseball in 3 or 4 years, but his hand-eye coordination, his athleticism, and he was so gifted. Like with the bat was one thing, but we'd put him in the outfield with a high sky and everything else, and he hadn't caught a fly ball and whatever. And he ran so smooth, the ball never, his eyes didn't bounce up and down. You watch him on the bases, the jumps that he would get. I think it's awful when kids are forced with these club teams and everything else to pick a sport when they're 10 years old. It shouldn't happen, and the parents shouldn't allow it to happen to their kids.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be the first coach to say that. There's a friend of mine who has coached a number of NHL players, and he says that these kids need a break. And I mean, it's one thing to make the pros, it's another thing to have a career where you're able to support yourself and your family, generations to come for many years. I mean, the percentages are what they are, and it's quite small. Scott, I'd love to ask you because I remember my first days following the Blue Jays, of course, at Exhibition Stadium. And, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, Exhibition Stadium was obviously home of the Blue Jays. I didn't really think of anything beyond that. But, you take a look at the stadium infrastructure from those days to today. I mean, you growing up in New Jersey, Exhibition Stadium wasn't like Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park. And now baseball stadiums are just so much more extravagant, and none of them are sharing with NFL teams and so on. The rumor is that Exhibition Stadium was concrete and it was spray painted green. The surface was so poor. I was wondering what your thoughts were in how the stadium infrastructure has just evolved over the years, because Skydome was built in '89. Now it's Rogers Center, and that was a technological marvel for the retractable roof. But in comes Camden Yards, in comes PNC Park in Pittsburgh, and it just seems like it's not only a lot more of an intimate experience for the fans, but it's a lot more beneficial and healthier for the players as well.
No doubt. And I'll give you some of my Toronto history. In that Exhibition Stadium is where I collected my first major league hit. I had a ground ball in between first and second off of Luis Leal. And those Blue Jay teams were really, really good, at that point. But, you'd look out to right center field, and it went a long ways because it was a Canadian football, stadium. Like you said, the turf was hard. When we played at home, we played in the Kingdome in Seattle when I got traded out there. And that surface was even worse than what they had at Exhibition Stadium. It was just awful. It was hard. You'd play a week and a half at home, and you felt like you were getting shin splints. And everything else. But Exhibition, all the stadiums sort of had their neat little nuances and everything. But the new parks that are out there today, and clearly as the loyal baseball fan would go root for their hometown team no matter what, the new stadiums, and it started with Camden Yards, are phenomenal. You don't even have to like baseball to enjoy your time at the stadium. There's just the amenities, the sight lines, the fact that most of these new ballparks now are downtown. Camden Yards still, to me, might have done it better than everybody else because it's been around for a while now, and it still is one of the best stadiums. You can walk around, you never lose sight lines of the game. I love these new ballparks, and I think they're almost a little retro. Right. When I was just kind of coming in, when you had, Riverfront, Three Rivers, Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, these cookie cutter buildings with turf that were used for concerts, football, whatever they needed to be. And now you have these intimate, beautiful baseball fields that you'll walk in and they just make you feel good. Citizens Bank, living where we are here in New Jersey, that is probably easier to get to than any of the New York stadiums. The food, the atmosphere, the music, the video boards. Being a fan at Major League Baseball games is much, much better now than it's ever been before.
And we were talking before we went to air about the renovations that took place at Rogers Center and the food experience, the sight lines. The first true experience I got was Progressive Field in Cleveland, and the atmosphere just hits you so much in the face. And in a couple of weeks, I will be going to Wrigley Field for the first time to catch the Jays series, and I cannot wait. I hope those bleacher bums are going to show some hospitality to me, because I kind of get a little vocal cheering for my Jays. But, very quickly, Scott, I do have to ask, with regards to the sports science specifically with pitchers, because who can't remember Jack Morris going 10 innings in the World Series against Atlanta? Who can think of pitchers going 120, 130 plus pitches? And now, Tommy John surgery was so rare in the mid to late 80s, 90s, and so on. And now it just happens at such a frequent pace. Do you have any thoughts towards that? Because, for somebody who saw firsthand, as a fan, of course, the Kawhi Leonard experience where he only played so many games and it seemed like it was a legitimate practice because he did have a serious injury the season before. And now load management has just gone completely haywire in the NBA. But in my opinion, it seems that pitching has taken a step back in baseball. Is that a sentiment you might agree with?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is sort of the pitching mentality, right? Jack Morris, and I had plenty of at-bats off of Jack Morris in my life. Didn't throw every pitch at 100% effort. Right, he would ease into games, he'd throw 80, 85%, work the corners, let hitters get themselves out. And then he would build up and he might throw 15 max effort pitches a game. These kids now, and it starts at the youth level, the number of kids that we have coming into college that have already had Tommy John surgery. Everything is about spin rate. Everything is about velocity. They never just go out and just pitch according to the game. These high school kids and these events that I'll go to all summer, there's 70 guys back there with radar guns, and the kids feel like, okay, I got to let it loose. The spin rate factor now is a big thing because it used to be a guy might just throw a nice smooth breaking ball, and now he's got to see if he can spin it 3,000. Right. So they overthrow everything. And even bullpens, these coaches are breaking out the technology.
Yep.
The arm's just not made to do that. It's really not. Max effort is completely different. Like I said, the pitchers when I was playing, they pitched. They didn't throw every pitch. Dave Stieb is a great example, and he had some injuries, but because of that slider he threw, but they throw BP fastballs. You'd be facing them. Every guy could throw mid-90s, but they pitched at 88 to 90, moving around. And then when the count was 1 ball, 2 strikes, they'd rear back and, okay, here's my 94, so you guys know I have it. Now with the bullpens, with the short games, with the pitch counts, guys are told just blow it out from the first pitch. And that goes through college because they have to, all right, well, if I don't spin my breaking ball 3,000 and if I don't throw 95, 96, I'm not going to get an opportunity. And the training, they don't take time off. They don't go play football. They don't go play hockey. They're just constantly throwing, constantly training, searching for more velocity, searching for more spin. And that's a recipe for disaster with arms and especially elbows.
Yeah, I think finesse is, becoming a major thing with these athletes now. They want to show finesse in baseball for sure. And that could be a recipe for disaster. I think that, like you said, these guys got to pitch by the book and not pitch to impress.
No doubt. And like I said, it starts, I'll go watch, some tournaments here in the next couple of weeks and stuff like that. And you'll see a kid throw 30 or 40 pitches on Friday and then throw 20 or 30 pitches on Sunday. And then the team get in the morning and then his team gets to the championship game of a tournament. And I don't like the tournament structure because all of a sudden now you're playing 6 games in 3 days and they're bringing a pitcher back and having him throw 3 times in 3 days, warming up, loosening up, and then bringing them into games. It's tough. We always tell the pitchers that if they can get to us in college without having Tommy John, then something good has happened.
Right. Okay, so to wrap things up here, when does recruiting start for Princeton?
It never stops. So we're
awesome.
constantly recruiting. I get several hundred emails every day. Our database is constantly filling up. The NCAA has certain dead periods, certain restrictions, but it never stops in terms of us looking through the database, looking at videos. Well, we don't get videos anymore. Looking at video clips now that are sent to us through YouTube or X. It never stops. Like right now, the 26 high school grads we have admitted, so we have our class that'll come in next fall. We're already starting to look. We can communicate with the 27 grads. We can't quite communicate with the 28 grads yet, but we're doing a lot of evaluations. They can reach out to us. They can send us links. We have coaches calling us. So it never stops. I have a 12-day trip to California and Chicago in a couple of weeks, so you won't see me at the gym for I'll be there for this week. I'll be there this week, and then you won't see me for a couple of weeks after that.
So Scott Bradley and I go to the Vibe Fitness gym at Point Pleasant. That's how Scott and I met each other.
Very nice.
And I'll tell you right now, Scott is in good shape for someone at his age. Like probably in better shape than I am at my age. I'm 28.
So you're saying I'm old?
No, I'm saying you're in great shape. I'm saying you're in great shape.
You can say it. I'm old.
No.
You're not old. You're not old. The better term is you're seasoned. You're seasoned.
There you go.
And you have the veteran experience. And I think people in kids in college, they look up to people like you for all your experience and everything that you've done.
Well, it's interesting because like when I'll talk to my team and I might watch a hitter and I might say, okay, your swing reminds me of Jay Buhner, or I'll mention a name of somebody I think they should know. And they look at me with this blank look on my face. And I go, you don't know who that is, do you? Like, nope, I have no idea who that is. So there's a little bit of a generation gap right now. I have to use X and other things of videos of current players and current hitting instructors and stuff like that to get through to my guys.
Yeah. I'm for somebody who's turning 47 this year. I'm seeing that experience, and you know what? We're aging like fine wine. I mean, so hey, that's how it is.
Yep.
That's how it is. So Princeton baseball might be over this year, but next year we'll be supporting Princeton baseball all year long. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Scott Bradley.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Scott.
This was a lot of
Thanks, Scott.
Real pleasure.
Thank you.
Scott, you're welcome to come back whenever you want.
We'll do it again at some point.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good. We will see you guys. You gonna be at the gym tomorrow?
I'm gonna be at the gym tomorrow. Yes.
All right. I'll make sure you're working hard.
I will.
All right. See you guys.
Take care, Scott.
Take care.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been our interview with Scott Bradley from Foursquare Sports. This is Sports at Score. Take care, everyone. From Matt, Kevin, Alec, and Randy. God bless you all. We will see you on our next episode this week. And that is all. Take care, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Christopher Mad Dog Russo here. And you know what I do? Foursquare Sports on Sunday nights, 6 to 8, with all those parts of the country taken care of. Listen all the time. You got it. Mad Dog on Mad Dog Unleashed. Listen to my guys. Listen to my guys.